this video, we're going to look at how our brand impacts the SEO results of non-branded queries. So what's the difference between brand queries and non-branded queries? In case you don't know, a brand query is a query that includes your website's brand name or maybe a variation of your brand name, something that's unique to your domain. A non-branded query is pretty much everything else. So keywords that don't reference a brand name or any part of it, including misspellings. So that's the difference between these two. Brand have to do with your brand, non-branded has to do with everything else. More likely what your brand does. Those are those keywords that you're writing blogs about, things that you're trying to earn traffic on. So the truth about brand queries is that a lot of businesses ignore them. They assume that because it's their brand name that they're just going to naturally rank for them and that it's all going to be good. So this is dangerous in today's Google for a number of reasons, and these are just a few, not all of them. The first is your domain actually might not be ranking for your branded queries. Google might not know much about your brand. Maybe it's not able to crawl or index your site. Maybe your brand is too closely related to another term so that term's ranking for it. There's a whole lot of reasons why your brand may not be ranking for its own name. You also could have incorrect listings. Maybe you've got the wrong pages showing up. Maybe you've got the wrong profiles. Maybe your Facebook's showing up, but your website's showing up below it. Maybe it's just kind of out of whack on the brand results. Maybe you've got bad reviews from other websites that are ranking ahead of your brand name. This happens quite a bit where brands just kind of ignore their brand, and then it turns out that they've got all these bad reviews ranking for branded queries. And then the last, maybe you've got missing information. Maybe there's incorrect information showing up in the knowledge panel or in a local pack or in a listing somewhere. And if you're not being aware of that, you've got some inconsistencies within your brand on Google. And that can impact how Google really sees and views your brand and the quality of your brand. So on this channel, we've talked a lot about structured data. We've talked a lot about entities and how Google has made this shift from strings, so just text, to things, which are entities. These are things or concepts that are singular, unique, they're well-defined and distinguishable. Now, a lot of times we think of entities as in those keywords that we're targeting. For instance, our business, we target terms like SEO. SEO is an entity. It's a concept that's singular. But in the same regard, so is our brand. SMA Marketing is an entity. It's a thing. It's a concept. It's singular. It's unique. It's well-defined and it's distinguishable. And those keywords that we're targeting are also connected and related to our brand. They're related to our brand's entity and how Google understands it, because those keywords describe our brand. So those keywords and our brand are very closely related when we look at the world of linked open data and knowledge graphs, as Google is, and how those things start to work and play together. If we'd actually zoom in on certain brand entities, you would notice different attributes associated with them if we did some sort of TensorFlow visualization on some of this entity audits or extractions that we do. So in the same regard, you have to think of your brand as an entity itself and those keywords, those non-branded terms, as things that define it. And actually, if we look at the organizational markup within schema.org, you'll notice there's a lot of ways that non-branded queries can actually show up in this process. So in the center here, we have organization. Now, there's a ton of different attributes that we can add to an organization when we're marking it up and helping Google understand our entity better. But one of those things is actually keywords, where you can put in specific terms that are related directly to your organization. But you can also write up what your brand knows about. These are those different concepts that your brand is maybe authoritative on. You've got a description, oftentimes, which include those non-branded keywords. You've got alternate names for your brand. This may help if your brand has one name but goes by something else. So for instance, when I first started this agency, we were Shelley Media Arts. And then we rebranded and shifted under SMA Marketing. So we add both of those names into our organizational markup because it's an alternate name that could be used for our brand itself. You also have something called brand that you can tag, as well as a main entity of the page. So on a specific page, what is this main entity? What is this specific page about? And even though it's about maybe SEO, that's still connected to your organization as a whole. So as you can see right here in a very visual way, our organization, our brand, is very, very much connected to those non-branded queries. So how does this impact the search results? Well, Google's talked a lot in the past about EAT. We've seen it in the quality guidelines. There's a lot of people in the SEO world that talk about EAT, and it stands for expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And this is really looking at the creator of the main content itself, and the website. So if you look at your main content and who's the creator, oftentimes it's the organization who's being attributed with that content. So Google's looking at this content and saying, are you an expert? Do you have authority? Are you trustworthy? Now, Google will tell you that EAT is not a rank factor directly, but I believe it does have a major impact on ranking, and so does a whole lot of people in the world of search. And I think we can see this with the way search has moved, that sites that don't have expertise, that aren't authoritative, that aren't trustworthy, begin to slide in the results. And I've actually seen brands where they've maybe not taken care of their brand results lose out on some queries that they used to rank for because their brand got diluted, their brand became less of an expert, their brand became less authoritative, and their brand became less trustworthy. And as a result, they lost lots of site traffic, not only from branded queries, but also began to impact non-branded queries as well, as Google saw them as less of a brand to trust. So if you want your brand to be known for a query, you've got to be an expert. You've got to prove that you're an expert. You've got to have authority, and you've got to show that you can be trusted. And if your brand's lacking in these areas, you're going to have a hard time ranking for anything, not just branded terms, but non-branded terms as well. So what can you do? How can you help improve your brand SEO? Well, the first thing you need to start doing is tracking and reviewing your brand queries, looking at the things you're ranking for. For instance, if you've got like your brand reviews, do your websites show up? Do your links show up? Are they positive? Are they negative? And if they're negative, what are you going to do to help jump that? This is an instance that we've faced a number of times with companies as we start working with them. We say, hey, you've got some of these brand queries that aren't very good, and we need to try to work on helping improve your brand and the visibility of your brand. You also want to track your brand mentions. How often are people mentioning your brand? And if they are, is it in a positive light or not? And again, what action can you take? You also want to make sure that you're listed on reputable sites. This isn't about just blindly putting links on websites, but if there's sites within your industry that make sense for you to be on and they're reputable and they can help show that you are trustworthy, those are good. And not just from a backlink standpoint. So if Google sees, okay, this is an organization that promotes, certain part of your industry and all of the competitors are on there and it's known as a well-known kind of organization and group, you should probably be on there too. And looking for those opportunities to improve your brand and its reputability by being on those sites. You also need to make sure you're making attribution or giving attribution when you're making claims. If you're writing pieces of content and you're showing your expertise or you're showing that you know what you're talking about, linking and quoting other experts is very helpful in that because you're saying, hey, I believe this and so does all these other people that Google you already think as being reputable. That helps with your users because they know that you're just not pulling stuff out of midair. But it also helps Google say, okay, this guy isn't making his claim on his own. It's actually backed by a number of people in this space as well. And you also want to be optimizing your knowledge panel. If you have one, optimizing your local listing, make sure that the information is correct. Make sure that your information is correct on your website as well. In any of those other platforms where your business information may be showing up and making sure that it's congruent and consistent. That's very, very important. And as you begin to do this, you can build the reputability of your brand. You can build the strength of your brand, the expertise, the authoritativeness, and the trustworthiness. Now, there's a whole lot more that you can do in the world of brand SERPs. And honestly, I'm going to make a quick pitch here for this book that I highly recommend you check out. I'm not getting anything for posting this on here, but Jason's book is very, very good. And it will help you, especially if you're new to the world of brand SERPs or brand SEO. I like this book. I use this book all the time. I think it's a really, really great resource. So go ahead and check this out. If you got some time, you can listen to it, read it, do whatever you need to do. But start to take ownership of your brand. That way you can get the results you want from the non-branded queries as well. If you got any questions about what we talked about today, you want to go a little bit deeper, or maybe another question related to SEO, please comment below. We'd love to continue that conversation with you. Don't forget to subscribe. And until next time, happy marketing.